Do you remember what happened? Yes. I was tracking a suspicious guy, and with good reason. I managed to jump out, remember the gunfire, and then nothing. The doctors, or whoever the hell they were, nodded, studying the readings on the monitors. When will he be discharged? Lisa asked. In a couple of days, more or less. One of them replied. He'll have to walk along the walls for a bit, and there'll be meds, of course. But no need to keep him under hospital conditions. Doctor, how long was I unconscious? 2.5 days. You were brought to us right after the incident, straight into surgery. Major, you were born under a lucky star. Just a couple of centimeters lower, and the bullet would have hit your aorta. We wouldn't have been able to save you then. As it was, the operation was fairly simple. You'll be running around good as new soon. I gave a crooked smile and closed my eyes. Pure dumb luck. The doctors were soon replaced by unfamiliar officers who grilled me thoroughly about what had happened. They first shuffled Lisa into a corner and eventually kicked her out of the room entirely. Once the interrogation was over, the officers vanished, and much more important figures walked in no less than Rear Admiral Vazovsky, and the Crown Prince himself had come to see me. Forgive me, gentlemen, I can't greet you properly, I said, trying to sit up straight in bed. Don't bother, Major. You saved my life. The young man waved it off, taking a seat beside me. The Admiral remained standing, nodding approvingly. It was my duty, Your Highness. I tried to maintain composure. And you fulfilled it brilliantly, Major. Admiral Vazovsky told me how effectively you've served the fleet and why you were chosen to handle security for the ceremony. I must say, even though this isn't quite your area of expertise, you handled it more than satisfactorily. The prince spoke like someone long used to giving orders to everyone around him. It didn't seem to matter that I was 10 years older, or that the admiral had him by 40. The emperor had raised his son well, so, Major Alt, the crown prince of the empire asks you, what is it that you want? Excuse me, Your Highness? I didn't quite catch that. I have the power to grant almost any wish, Major, he explained patiently. And I know how to be grateful. Trust me. A storm of thoughts raced through my mind. What did I want? To get the hell out of this star system. That much was certain. To see Adele again. Then I glanced at Lisa sleeping by my bedside and felt like a bastard. On the other hand, we'd never defined our relationship. Nothing serious ever came of it. It had always been light and casual. At least, that's how it seemed to me. Still, asking for a simple transfer would be foolish. I needed something bigger, something that wouldn't make me look like an idiot in the prince's eyes, but would still help me a great deal later on. I almost smirked. The project decided everything for you, pal. 20 years ago. I licked my lips and looked at the prince. He waited patiently. Your Highness, as a kid, I dreamed of becoming the captain of a starship. Life took a different path, but I never gave up on that dream. I studied whenever time and resources allowed. I'd like to apply to the Fleet Academy's High Command faculty. Is that possible? The Admiral let out a surprised snort, which he quickly tried to cover up with a cough. The prince leaned back in his chair, eyes wide, staring at me. Major, I could grant you an estate anywhere in the Empire and a generous pension. You'd live in peace, do whatever you like. Thank you, Your Highness. But I don't place much value on money or the normal life. Besides, I already have everything I need to live comfortably if I wanted that. My father once told me that a man must always have a distant and worthy goal, otherwise he stagnates and becomes nothing. The prince tilted his head with surprising seriousness, nodding in agreement. The admiral puffed up with pride, as if to say, he's one of ours. Very well, Major. You'll be admitted to the next class at the academy, no entrance exams. You'll have full access to all programs, free of charge. You'll also receive a stipend for the entire duration of your studies. However, I won't influence your exam results. If you fail, I'm sure Admiral Vazovsky and the fleet will welcome you back with open arms. Thank you, Your Highness, I said. The prince wasn't holding back. Those terms were more than generous. I'd be a fool not to make it through the next stage of training. And I'm no fool. In addition, the prince stood and pulled a small box from his pocket. I'm awarding you the first-class order of imperial gratitude. You've earned it. He placed the open box in my hand. Damn, it was stunning. A Silurian garnet, alive with shifting hues, framed in gold and diamonds. A true imperial decoration. The prince noticed the way I stared at it and nodded in satisfaction. Major, our ships are leaving for the crown tomorrow. You'll be flying with us? Otherwise, I'm afraid you'd have to wait another year to enter the academy. Objections? Requests? None, Your Highness. Just one thing. Please arrange to have my belongings transferred to the new ship. It will be done. Admiral, of course, Your Highness. All of Major Alt's possessions will be delivered to his new assignment today. Excellent. Major, I must take my leave. Someone will come for you shortly and transfer you to our vessel. Get well soon. The prince left, and I was alone with the admiral. The old man let out a heavy sigh. I figured you'd move up eventually, son, but I didn't expect it this soon. Good luck to you. I believe one day you'll be sitting in a chair like mine. He gave me a solemn nod and left the room. Through the partially open blinds, I watched as Vazovsky approached Lisa, who had been waiting outside the whole time, and said something to her. Her shoulders sank lower and lower with every word. By the end, she just lowered her head and stared at the floor, not looking up. The admiral gave her a paternal pat on the back, then turned and disappeared. Lisa stood there for a while, motionless. Then she turned and walked away, without even glancing at my room. I never saw her again. The capital planet welcomed me with familiar warmth and comfort. There were no more signs of war. Everywhere I looked, I saw cheerful, contented faces. Perhaps that was because none of the former inhabitants remained here. Only resettlers from the homeland of the dictatorship. Regardless, the planet was impressive. The emperor had wisely invested the immense resources now at his disposal, and it had paid off. I walked along beautiful, cozy streets, admiring the restored and newly built houses of the capital. I admired the fountains and the neat parks that appeared at every corner. The miserable little world in the Prometheus system seemed like a stale swamp in comparison. I silently thanked the prince once again in my own brains. There was real life in the Pearl, and I was damn glad to be here. The new academy was located on the outskirts of the city, and I allowed myself the pleasure of walking there. Lately, I'd found joy in the simple things. Taking the high-speed train from the spaceport to the center among other passengers, instead of renting a flyer. Walking from the hotel to the academy instead of calling a cab. For some reason, I truly enjoyed it. Maybe all those years inside a steel box floating in orbit had taken their toll. The secretary at the academy scanned my ID without surprise or enthusiasm. Citizen Alt, you are enrolled in the program for Officers of Deep Space Command. You have been granted an imperial stipend of 1,500 credits per month for the entire duration of your studies. You've been assigned first-class accommodations. In the Academy Town, you have unrestricted access to all programs and study materials. Classes begin in 6 weeks, but you may move into your new residence immediately. Having the Emperor's son owe you a favor, it's pretty convenient that I gradually began settling into my new life. I wrote to Adele, letting her know my current location. I sent a few messages to former comrades, then spent nearly a month enjoying the seaside, hunting for blue mussels. Adele didn't reply. Most likely she was somewhere far from the capital planet. Though with modern communication, that shouldn't have been an issue. Eventually, after sending her a couple more letters, I returned to the Pearl. It was time to prepare for the coming academic year, and that's when Novak found me. He simply sat down next to me on a bench in the park where I liked to spend time watching the bold, fluffy squirrels. Coffee? He asked, handing me a cup. I took it automatically, trying not to show my surprise. Novak nodded to some internal thought and pulled out a bun. The squirrels on the nearby tree perked up instantly. What's the plan? He asked after a brief silence. I'm going to study to become a ship captain, I shrugged. We'll see from there. I figure this is probably the last rung of my career ladder. What about you? I chose a dead-end path. He grimaced, tossing a piece of bread to the nearest squirrel. And I'm not really capable of anything serious myself. So I've taken on the role of support and logistics, if you will. I see. What about the others? Carl made it to captain, but there's not much promise there. Still, we can count on him for a one-off force op if needed. Ahmed's doing badly. He tried to start a kind of criminal organization, but picked the wrong time and place. Thankfully, he didn't manage to do much damage, got 5 years. He's out now, but we no longer keep in touch. So that leaves me. Exactly, Novak. Nodded. We had high hopes for Jared, but he started attracting too much attention. What happened on Prometheus was probably the best outcome. We sat quietly for a moment, each lost in thought. One of the squirrels crept up to my leg, nosing around my pants for food. After the incident on Prometheus, you were being checked out too. Same kind of process. Novak said casually. A chill ran down my spine. And, don't worry, I managed to slip in a few changes where needed. Took a big risk, but it had to be done. You're our last hope. His eyes burned with a fanatic fire. They've backed off, though you're still being watched a bit. The timing was just too coincidental, you understand. Thanks. He nodded, falling silent again and watching the squirrels. I think the prince might have helped steer the security guys off you too. Did his part. So for now, there's nothing to fear, but caution won't hurt. Great. So you go about living your life, making plans, and meanwhile, your fate is hanging by a thread. And how can you help me? I asked, changing the subject. For now, I can't. Just study. I'll make sure everything's all right on your end. We'll talk again when you finish the academy. My talk with Novak stirred up a storm inside. Until then, I remembered what we'd been trained for, why we were created, but it had remained distant, abstract knowledge. There were always others like me meant to carry out the same mission. That made life easier. As the saying goes, if you want a job to never be done, assign it to several people. Now things were different. Novak had laid out everyone's role too clearly. I was the key link, the executor. He was the support. Carl, a single-use asset for emergencies. Ahmed, a waste, which meant that, out of the entire massive, ultra-secret project, only I truly remained. Everything now depended on whether I chose to act, and what I chose to do. I mulled over that thought for a while. Back in the project, Dr. Zoll, along with other instructors, had always emphasized the ideological part of our mission. Naturally, for us as children, the primary goal was revenge for our loved ones who died under fire from orbit. That's what they focused on. But as we got older, the message shifted. Helping our fellow citizens became the new focus, and the teachers had been absolutely right. In the last few years, there'd been a mass reshuffling. True Imperial citizens moved to the first and second planets of the system, pushing the locals to the frozen third. Nothing was going to change. The Emperor only trusted those like himself, those who came from 3. And my people really did need help, but I didn't believe I could do anything that would actually change things for the better. Eventually, I just said screw it and dove into my studies with all the determination the project had trained into me. Then, one fine day, Adele appeared. She sent a simple message. I'm in the capital. We need to meet. That was it. I had to call to confirm the time and place. She seemed tense, almost nervous, and by the time I left for the meeting, I was full of uneasy thoughts. After all, nearly 5 years had passed. A lot can change. And I myself was a prime example of how much a person can change over time. That we met at a small restaurant near another park full of squirrels. We ordered our usual coffee and spent a long time just staring at each other in silence. Adele hadn't changed much. She'd filled out just a little. Her face was more serious, her eyes more tired. But overall, she was still the same beauty I remembered. You look great, I finally said, breaking the long silence and sipping my coffee. Thanks, she replied with a faint smile. You too. You seem more serious somehow. Even got some gray hair. Really? Didn't notice, I said, surprised. I honestly hadn't paid attention. A little bit. Right here, she said. reaching out and gently running her fingers over my temple. A warm, pleasant feeling spread through my chest. "So, tell me, how have you been all this time?" she asked, lifting her coffee mug and peering at me over its rim that I had no choice but to tell her. I didn't try to hide anything, but in hindsight, I probably should have waited before mentioning Sergeant Riley. That was the moment she stopped me cold, saying she didn't want to hear about it. So I skipped ahead, talked about the events at the palace and my transfer back to my home system. When I finished, we sat in silence for a while. Then Adele gave a little shake of her head, like someone about to dive headfirst into icy water. "I've got something to tell you too." Truth be told, her confession didn't really surprise me. The story was painfully familiar. Loneliness. No real hope of seeing me again. A relationship born from all that, which nearly ended in marriage. It stung a little, even though I understood the situation perfectly. I had done the same thing in my own way that we ordered more coffee and once again fell into a kind of uneasy silence, sneaking glances at each other from time to time. "I want to start over," I said at last. "You were the best thing in my life. And now we've got a second chance." Maybe I said the wrong thing. Adele lowered her gaze and studied the table in front of her. After a pause, she replied softly, "Chris, let's not rush into anything. I honestly don't know. It's been so many years. So much has happened. All right, whatever you say." "No, don't get the wrong idea," she said quickly, lifting her sad eyes to meet mine. "It's just, I'm not ready right now. But my ship will be in orbit for the foreseeable future. We can still see each other." That lifted a weight from my heart. The date hadn't exactly been romantic. If anything, it had been awkward and clumsy, but it didn't end things between us. On the contrary, it gave me hope. I walked home alone, but my spirits were soaring. My studies continued. Slowly, the knowledge of navigation, math, and physics came back to me. If I had enrolled 10 years earlier, I'd have had a serious edge. But back then, that would have raised too many red flags. Now, age was my enemy. My brain had grown lazy, resisting new information that I barely managed to keep my grades high enough to stay in the program. My classmates were 10 to 15 years younger, and while they looked at my ribbons with respect, their attitude was condescending. Like I was some old man trying to keep up in grade school. To say that irritated me would be putting it mildly. I knew I was smarter, better educated, more capable than the lot of them. But the only way to prove that was through academic performance, and I had nothing to show. Still, I worked. By the end of the first year, I had caught up with the rhythm of the program. I studied like a man possessed, squeezing every spare moment out of the day, and slowly, my results began to improve. I might have gone insane from all the pressure, if not for my occasional meetings with Adele. Bit by bit, we were finding our way back to what we used to have. Not easily, but steadily. When the final exams came, I didn't finish at the top, but I also wasn't among the worst. And then, unexpectedly, I was summoned to a meeting with the Academy's new rector, none other than my former dean, Rear Admiral Simmons. Looks like I wasn't the only one slowly climbing the career ladder. In the 6 years that had passed, the former dean had gotten bulkier and picked up a certain air of joviality. Along with the promotion, by default, the Academy rector held the rank of vice admiral, so Simmons now sported fresh insignia. "Take a seat, Major. Or should I still call you Cadet?" He joked as I stepped into his office. "Whatever you prefer, sir," I replied. "Drop the formalities, Major. I save that for the fresh cadets who don't know which end of the console to hold. In your case, I already know you're worth something." He gave me a slow, satisfied once-over. "Thank you. Truth is, I didn't even recognize you at first when they ran the assassination attempt footage on the news. Then I forgot all about it. Only when I got word that someone was enrolling by imperial decree did I look at the documents and remember. Still chasing that childhood dream. I'm doing my best, Vice Admiral. I've kept an eye on your progress. You know, people don't like it when someone gets in through a back door, imperial or otherwise. Especially not in a faculty where mistakes can cost lives. I'll admit, I expected more from you at the start. Why the slow takeoff? I'm not 20 anymore, I said with a shrug. I'm trying, but my brain isn't as quick as it used to be. Fair enough. The Admiral leaned back and steepled his fingers, studying me. So what does that make me? Over the hill already? That's not what I meant, sir. Relax, just joking. Still, looks like you found your stride by the end of the year. That's why I called you in. What do you see in your future? Major. I shrugged. Finish the academy, get assigned. Most likely, I'll end up on a destroyer or cruiser bridge, starting out as assistant janitor, like everyone else. Work my way up. Maybe one day I'll make captain. That's probably the ceiling for someone like me. The Admiral nodded thoughtfully. Here's the thing. You've got enough years under your belt for people to form a real opinion of you. And you've shown your worth, sometimes brilliantly, sometimes solidly. The Imperial forces value high-level specialists. Believe me, I know. It may not look like it from the outside, but officers like you, there's a waiting list for them. Seriously? I asked. Sure, I knew the Empire valued talent. But to hear that someone already wanted me on their crew, that was new. Very seriously. You've got 14 years of service and officers, rank, a stack of combat missions, and plenty of enemy corpses to your name. You haven't burned out, and you haven't lost the taste for duty. That's rare. Why are you telling me this? The Admiral paused, like he was deciding whether to let me in on some classified secret. Then he nodded to himself and said, One of my friends, the captain of the cruiser Imperium, submitted a request to the Academy. He's looking for a standout officer from your class, preferably the best, and I'm seriously considering putting your name forward. What do you think? I had to think about that. The Imperium was one of the newest cruisers, launched after the reorganization of the state. A relatively new crew, only a few years of joint service, pristine condition, cutting-edge systems and armament. A dream assignment. That ship would be involved in every major operation, inside and outside Imperial space. In short, the ideal post. Vice Admiral. That would be an incredible opportunity. I just have one question. What do I need to do to earn it? The Admiral gave a satisfied chuckle. I'm glad you understand what this means. It is a rare chance. And I only need one thing from you. Finish your second year ranked in the top 5. I want my friend to get a truly outstanding officer, not just a competent graduate. His words struck a chord, deep, so much so that I spent the entire break spending my savings on tutors. I worked on the subjects that gave me the most trouble, practiced real-world problem-solving, memorized theoretical concepts. On one of my rare days off, sitting in the park and watching squirrels out of habit while waiting for Adele, whose ship was still stuck in orbit, Novak found me again. By now, I didn't even flinch at his sudden appearances. So, how are things going for you? He asked without even a greeting. I'm studying, I shrugged. There's a chance I might get assigned to the Imperium, but I need to finish the course in the top 5. I hired tutors, taking an accelerated program. You'll manage, Novak said, without a shred of doubt. But the Imperium, now that's interesting. Did you know that cruisers of that class are the first to be equipped with the X-52-16 system? I don't even know what that is, I replied calmly. Something classified, I'm guessing. You know it, my friend, you do, he said with a sad tone. We all know. You mean to say, yeah, the fiery veil. That very one. Shit. Exactly. We sat in silence for a while, each lost in our own thoughts. I was remembering what had happened 25 years ago. In my ears, the chimes rang solemnly once again. I'll analyze the situation with the new data, Novak finally said, getting to his feet. Study harder, my friend. And I did study harder, though I didn't think it was possible. My classmates started looking at me not with condescension, but with envy. Even the professors seemed to stop deliberately flunking me. Still, I never became the best in the course. There was no shortage of brains at the academy, especially young, hungry ones. Adele didn't like my obsession with studying. By that time, we were living together again, renting a flat not far from the academy. Well, I was living there, and she dropped by during leave. And the fact that I spent most of my free time buried in coursework irritated her a little. The excuse of serving on a cutting-edge cruiser didn't help much. What does it matter, really? The old man's right. You'll be in demand. You'll definitely get a good assignment. Maybe even get to choose for yourself. Yeah, try proving that. Still, at least it never escalated into serious fights. Maybe Novak had too much faith in me. By the end of the course, I still hadn't cracked the top 5. And when finals came around, I just gave up and, to Adele's delight, stopped killing myself over it. My performance dropped to the bottom of the top 10. That's when I got called in to see the rector again. Simmons looked at me disapprovingly, but not like I was a lost cause. My apologies, Vice Admiral. I did my best. I know, Major. And I'm sorry, too, for setting the bar sky high. But I think it did you good in the end. Yeah, if you don't count the chronic fatigue and endless arguments with Adele, well, I think your assignment is settled. If you don't bomb the exams, you'll be going to the Empire. That is, if you want to. I think one of the top 10 graduates is a perfectly suitable candidate. But you said I had to finish in the top 5. A bit of an exaggeration, Major, the Admiral smirked. To push your results up. I chose not to respond. I like you, Major, Simmons continued. He got up and pulled a bottle of cognac from the cabinet. Drink. I'd be honored. Of course I would. Refusing a drink with a superior officer had always been borderline treason. The cognac was smooth, velvety, and spread across my tongue like an oil droplet, filling my mouth with flavors of chocolate and nuts. I paused, savoring the unfamiliar sensation. Maybe I should have tried something like this long ago, brought in from the Federation. The Admiral guessed my thoughts. Hard to find on the market, only through connections. He carefully sealed the bottle and placed it back in the cabinet. Then he sat down again, inspecting the glass in the light. Major, you should understand that I'm giving you a massive advance of trust by sending you to that ship, he said eventually. My belief that you're a good officer and the right person for the job means nothing without your own will to live up to that belief. I need you to grasp the weight of this. I don't want to have to explain to my friend if you suddenly start living a reckless life, get fat, and stop being worthy of your rank. I want you to be the best damn officer on that ship. Am I clear? Yes, sir, Vice Admiral. I placed my glass on the table and sat up straight, doing my best to embody the Admiral's image of an ideal officer. In that case, Major, I won't keep you. I trust you won't disappoint me. I saluted and left the rector's office, regretting the unfinished glass of cognac. No doubt the old man would polish it off or even pour it back into the bottle. Probably kick me out so I wouldn't get too much of that divine drink. The exams came suddenly, and ended just as suddenly. I could hardly believe the studying was finally over, and I no longer had to torture myself with brain-crushing problems. The ordeal was done, but I barely had the strength to be happy. Those 2 years at the academy had drained me completely. The gray hair Adele had once noticed had grown noticeably. My eyes had sunken in. Fine but clear lines creased my forehead. I had aged more in 2 years than some do in 10. Cadet Christopher Alt. The Empire congratulates you on completing your training and wishes you a long and successful career. In accordance with regulations, you are hereby granted the rank of Fleet Captain, 1 star. Your current rank of Major is moved to reserve status. It may be reinstated in full should you transfer to administrative positions, ground forces, or comparable civilian roles. Based on fleet needs and academic performance, you are offered a posting as second officer aboard the cruiser Empire. Do you accept this assignment? Yes, I accept. Effective immediately, you are assigned to the cruiser Empire. For further instructions, report to the ship's information center. The Academy wishes you continued success. For the Empire. And so my education ended. The rector didn't call me in again. Adele had flown off with her destroyer to the 3rd planet and couldn't be at the ceremony. Even my old comrades didn't send any congratulations. Not that I blamed them. During my studies, I'd barely stayed in touch. They probably didn't even know I'd graduated today. And even if they did, everyday life has a way of making you forget things like that. They all had families, kids I turned downed the classmates' invitation to the graduation party, and, as usual, went to the park to watch squirrels. I was still hoping Novak might show up again and give me some company, but he never came. Even though I stuck around until dark, Novak didn't show the next day either, or the day after. But I had calmed down by then, and the loneliness slowly faded. Adele sent me a message. She was sitting on a bed in a t-shirt, looking serious as she congratulated me on finishing school. Funny girl. Even the lunk sent his regards eventually, along with an invitation to visit them again at the hotel, take a break, and meet the new little lunk. I seriously considered it. Empire had sent word that I was free for another 3 weeks before it arrived in orbit. But those plans got interrupted when Novak finally did show up one fine day. "Hey," he muttered, sitting down beside me. "We've got to stop meeting in the park. Could get traced by accident." I shrugged. The spook here. Could have come up with better rendezvous points earlier. "Didn't have the time," he grimaced. "But now we'll need to. Here, take this card." I glanced at the shimmering blue plastic in my hand. It read, "Business Club Corona," with an address and contact numbers. "Got it? Hand it back," he said, holding out his hand. "I can't sponsor your membership. They shouldn't know we're connected. You'll have to join on your own. Your decorations and rank will get you in. But it's not cheap. 10,000 up front, 500 credits a month. Still, it's a safe place to talk." I checked. "Got the funds." "Yeah," I said, estimating that my savings would cover the fees just fine. "Great. I'm there Tuesday and Saturday evenings. Today's Wednesday. See you Saturday." He stood up and vanished into the trees without even saying goodbye, leaving me alone with the greedy rodents. Damn it. Before signing up at the club, I figured I should do some thinking and buy new clothes. Medals were all well and good, but showing up to an elite business club in a cadet's uniform would have been plain stupid that I spent enough on clothes to buy a decent flyer, and spent the evening getting used to the new outfit and brushing up on long-forgotten etiquette lessons. The next morning, I called a taxi and headed to the place. The club sign wasn't particularly eye-catching, but its location, just 200 meters from the palace in Central Square, was undeniably impressive. The interior did not disappoint, either. Expensive wood, leather, velvet, and a soft, subdued light. The administrator, or butler, I wasn't sure which, was dressed perhaps even better than I was. With a courteous smile, he stepped out from behind the front desk. "Good morning, Mr. Alt. How may I assist you?" "Good morning. I'd like to inquire about membership. Is it possible to join, or are you currently not accepting new members?" "Our club is open to all respectable gentlemen who have both the desire and the means to become members," he replied with a polite smile. "Allow me to escort you to a private office where you can review all the necessary documents." He led me to a cozy little room with a sofa, a desk, and a full-wall information screen. After inviting me to sit down, he asked if I'd like something to drink. "Coffee, if possible." "Of course, Mr. Alt. Any particular recipe?" "You know, out in space, there isn't much variety, so I won't pretend to be a connoisseur. Just black, no sweeteners. I'll leave the rest up to you." "As you wish. I'll start a short introductory video for you now. Afterwards, you can browse through the FAQ and ask any specific questions if needed." "Thank you." He nodded with importance and left the room. The screen came to life with a promotional video about the club. Mostly marketing fluff, something about gathering the city's elite, refined entertainment, confidentiality, and security. Support for members in difficult situations. Now that sounded more interesting. When the video ended, I took a sip of the excellent coffee and began to examine the textual information more carefully. And it was impressive. The club didn't merely offer entertainment and networking space. The membership card also acted as a kind of pass to exclusive events. At any time, day or night, you could use the card to summon armed security, police, medical services, a lawyer, and more. Yes, these services were paid separately, but sometimes being able to call a lawyer or a squad of armed guards with a single tap was worth far more than money. The downside? The cost. Even something as basic as a taxi ride through the card cost 10 times more than usual. But in major imperial cities, that meant a luxury car would be at your door in 5 minutes. Guaranteed. In more remote areas, a flyer would be dispatched, though that option was significantly more expensive. In short, the club offered an elite level of service for those who could afford it. And I felt a pang of envy, a solid, bitter envy. Then I discovered that my 10,000 credits would only get me a silver level membership, which meant that 3/4 of the club's territory would be completely off limits to me. In other words, they were telling me, yes, you're a respectable citizen, a credit to your nation, and we'll gladly welcome you into our prestigious club. But to truly enjoy everything we offer, please complete a 1-year probationary period and accumulate 100,000 credits. Then we'll upgrade you to a gold card. What it took to get a platinum or diamond card, I never learned. Probably 1,000,000 credits, or a blood relation to the emperor. That I stepped out of the room and returned to the administrator. Have you made a decision, Mr. Alt? He asked, still smiling. Any further questions? No, thank you. No more questions. And the coffee was wonderful. Thank you. My pleasure, he said with a small bow. I still want to join your club. What do I need to do? Oh, we already have your identification details. All that's left is the initial fee and the first month's membership dues. There's a slight issue. I'll be shipping out soon and won't be on planet. Can I pay the membership fee upfront for a year? Of course, Mr. Alt. Most of our members do just that. Naturally, this place catered to the wealthy. I confirmed the transaction and instantly became 16,000 credits poorer. Please wait just a few minutes. Your membership card is being prepared. Sure enough, a moment later, a concealed door opened and a man in an identical suit emerged, carrying a velvet-lined tray with a silver rectangle. I took it carefully and examined it. On the smooth metal surface, embossed in subtle relief, were the words Crown Business Club. Sterling silver, 850 grade, the porter explained, with a standard alloy mix. Naturally, the interior is electronic. To access the card's functions, simply flip it over. It reads your fingerprints, so it won't work in someone else's hands. I flipped the card. Menu options appeared: taxi call, police, and so on. Just like in the promo video. Thank you for your assistance. My pleasure, Mr. Alt. Would you like a tour of the club now? I considered it. I had time to spare. The club was massive. I got the impression it took up the entire building, and the nearby storefronts were just decorative facades. The upper floors were off limits, clearly marked with icons of the gold, platinum, and diamond cards. Oh well, the first floor was a maze of rooms and corridors. In cozy corners sat several bars, their bartenders polishing glasses. Here and there I saw billiard tables and card games. In the far end of the floor, I found a lounge where 3 men lounged lazily on sofas, watching as half-naked dancers moved elegantly around poles. Well, looks like I might be staying a while. I nodded to the patrons, received polite nods in return, unbuttoned my jacket, and settled into a soft chair. Almost immediately, a waiter materialized beside me. Mr. Alt, may I offer you a drink or perhaps a light breakfast? Could you bring me a glass of cognac? I racked my memory, trying to recall the name of that marvelous drink I once had with the rector. Earth's Pearl, please. Allow me to compliment your taste, sir. It will be my pleasure. The cognac was still amazing, but my card balance now showed a 400 credit deduction for one glass. For 100. I sipped it slowly, savoring every drop to get my money's worth. I had a feeling I wouldn't be tasting it again anytime soon. When I finished, I found the tip section in the card menu and added 10 more credits. My newfound frugality wouldn't let me give any more. I didn't return to the club until Saturday. After all, my funds were limited. But that day I had to go. The same administrator greeted me with a smile, handed me a booklet, and wished me a pleasant evening. I stepped inside. Nothing much had changed, except the crowd. It was now at least 10 times larger. Some people chatted over drinks, others dined, and a few played eternal poker. The air held the faint aroma of expensive cigars, accompanied by soft classical music. I was starting to like this place. Mr. Alt, would you care for a glass of your favorite cognac? The bartender near the counter asked as I approached. Actually, no. I'd like to try something else. Perhaps you could recommend an imperial cognac with an interesting bouquet? To hell with the bouquet. I just hoped it'd be cheaper than the imported one. Certainly. Mr. Alt, may I suggest Dictat? A limited batch produced here on Crown 3. 28 years ago. That was the year our winemakers perfected the cultivation of snow grapes. The cognac has a unique, cool flavor profile with a hint of ozone. Best served chilled. Let's do it. I sighed in defeat. So much for saving money. The cognac was exquisite. What else could it be, when one glass cost nearly 600 credits? You have excellent taste, said a familiar voice behind me. Allow me to introduce myself. Novak Ivankovich, cybersecurity specialist. Christopher Alt, fleet captain, I said, shaking his outstretched hand. Funny enough, one of my specialties is closely related to yours. No kidding? I've always been curious how things work with the fleet. Maybe you could spare me some time? And I'll take the liberty of treating you to dinner. Deal, I said, following him into one of the free private rooms. Novak placed an order with a nearby waiter and pressed a small button on the table. That's the local distortion field, he explained, pulling a small box from his briefcase. And this one is mine, just in case. So, wait, the order's coming. We'll talk after. What do you think of the club? The club is great, but damn is it expensive, I said, glancing sourly at the glass of cognac in my hand. Oh, Dictat. Good cognac. But I prefer the varieties shipped in from the Federation. I hate to ask, but where do you get the money? I've only been here 2 days and already burned through my usual monthly budget. Well, first off, not everyone drinks this kind of cognac, he shrugged. You can have a great evening here for 100 credits. Dinner, games, girls. So you just splurged a bit. As for the money, I made a pretty good move. To keep it brief, for several years, nearly my entire salary went into the local stock exchange. Remember, there was a construction boom here and all that. I analyzed developing firms and invested in them. When things calmed down, I just kept trading. I wrote a few papers that bring in some steady income. All in all, I've saved about 5 million. Wow, I couldn't hide my surprise. Novak nodded. Yeah. Now the task is to find a way to transfer at least some of that to you. It'd be stupid if, with those resources, you couldn't buy something you really need. And how do you propose we do that? I already have a plan. First, we'll have to meet here a few times. If questions come up, you say you met a brilliant manager at the club, he smirked proudly, which, to be honest, isn't far from the truth. Then, before you deploy to the cruiser, we'll sign a contract. You'll put the money in my trust under a high-risk trading strategy. The rest's on me. It's a normal arrangement, just not many take those risky strategies. If anything happens, you say I convinced you and all that. How much money do you have now? I did a quick calculation. The bonus from the Imperial Commendation was hefty, very hefty, but not much remained. I can scrape together about 20,000. Novak grimaced. Not much. I thought it'd be more. Sorry, some of us press buttons, others fight, I said, feeling a bit offended. All right, don't get worked up, he raised a calming hand. Oh, here comes our order. The waiter deftly set the plates and vanished. Eat up, and I'll start talking. Let me just turn on the do not disturb sign. He found and pressed a button, then folded his hands, watching me eat soup. You've got good manners, not forgotten in all this time, he said with a sigh. All right, listen. I've practically worked out the operation plan over the past year. Lots of components, but it all centers on your new assignment. I kept eating. In 2 years, there'll be a grand celebration of the victory anniversary. The 10th anniversary was SOSO. There was the Prometheus fiasco and a lot of internal issues here. The 15th will be huge. The whole capital will turn into a festival zone. The emperor will give a speech. Maybe the prince will be there too. The most interesting part, there will be a fleet parade over the capital. It's not public yet, but it will happen. You get where I'm going. Of course I did. I almost dropped my spoon when it clicked. I looked up at Novak's snarling grin. The curtain? He nodded. Exactly. An equivalent response. Retribution coming after a quarter century. Your eyes look like a fanatic's, I said, fishing out some unknown but tasty morsels from the bottom of my bowl. Maybe. Novak didn't argue. But this is exactly what we were prepared for, my friend. You know, I put down my spoon and looked him in the eye. To kill millions with a single button press, I need motives beyond revenge. My mother would disown me if she found out. I expected anything but a restrained nod. You're absolutely right. I spent a lot of time checking if hypnosis was used in the project. I wasn't keen on being a dumb puppet. I had similar thoughts. I can reassure you, we weren't hypnotized. Well, he shrugged, I haven't found any signs in 6 years. It's very Zal-like. He made sure we were aware of everything we did. That's good. But why tell me all this? Once I established that my thoughts were my own, I started studying the project's doctrine. I decided it had a right to exist. Our desire for revenge is just a spark that must ignite a flame. After that, I stopped holding back that spark. I was silent, wondering if he was sane or if I should find a way to get out of here. Novak seemed to sense it and smirked. Don't worry, Chris. I'm perfectly sane. I just want to tell you that our mission is worth it. Look, he pulled a tablet from his briefcase and handed it to me. These are our fellow citizens. They're all on the 3rd planet now. You've been there, you know what it's like. Now imagine the planet slowly losing internal heat, gravity, and atmosphere. The Federals are doing their job. Photos and videos showed people bundled in whatever they could find, wandering snowy streets of dark cities. Mining graphs show the entire population will die in 20 to 25 years because the climate, gravity, and atmosphere will be incompatible with human life. I shook my head to ward off the ringing in my ears. They sent them to die, Chris. First, they destroyed half our planet. Now they're killing the rest. There's no rehab program, no social elevator to get out. Just cold and death. There's a reason for that, I said, my appetite greatly diminished after the viewing. What's the point? Dr. Zal was a genius, Novak shrugged. Nobody negotiates with small partisans. Such talks create dangerous precedents, and their actions don't do much real harm. But everything depends on the scale of the operation. Steal a credit, you go to jail. Steal $1 billion, you become respected, and your enemies go to jail. And you think, yes, the plan is calculated down to the smallest detail. We need to deliver a blow that brings the empire to its knees. All at once. And you'll deliver it. He looked me hard in the eyes. After that, the information bombs I'll plant everywhere we can reach will go off. The message will be, you destroyed our planet and our people. We will do the same if the Crown Commonwealth citizens don't get a chance to live. It'll be everywhere, and it will work. But I won't live to see it. No, you won't, he nodded. And neither will I live more than a few days after. The first thing security will do after our strike is cross-check facts and identities. And come for each of us. You can try to run, but it's foolish. It's easier to calmly drink a glass of cognac and put a bullet in your head with a sense of a mission accomplished. The question is, are you ready to do that? I looked at the tablet lying before me. Ready. I woke up in a cold sweat and lay still on the bed for a while, staring at the ceiling. It had been a long time since I dreamed. And honestly, it would have been better not to dream at all. Or to dream again those familiar silver chimes. Damn them. The past year had been a real trial for me, don't I know? I slipped into the cruiser's crew surprisingly easily. Age, my service record, and Simmons's personal recommendation played their part. I performed simple administrative and technical duties on the bridge, sometimes stood watch, fully commanding the huge cruiser, getting used to the burden of responsibility. In short, I led the usual life of an executive officer. The problem lay elsewhere in my life. Both my cruiser and the destroyer Adele patrolled near the capital planet. Coordinating our shore leaves wasn't a problem at all. Our relationship was developing again, and at one point, Adele brought up marriage. Really, what obstacles could there be? Two successful fleet officers, financially stable, healthy, loving each other. Why not? But I knew why. The last thing I wanted was for Adele to carry my name after what I was about to do. Honestly, I should have cut ties with her to spare her a world of trouble. But I couldn't. That was my weakness and my burden. I just couldn't give up those moments of happiness. And the torment only grew that I had to agree but postpone the date as long as possible. My beloved sulked and got angry but eventually accepted the delays. There was also Novak, whom I had to meet more and more often. Fortunately, the financial schemes brought increasing sums to the account, so Adele didn't object much to my trips. To the club. Look, Chris, we have a lot of problems to solve, Novak said during one of those meetings. First, you must be guaranteed to be on the bridge during the parade. The problem is that per regulations, the second officer is off the bridge at formal events. Only the duty crew, captain, and first officer remain. Got it. So I need to move up a rank before the deadline. Not just by the deadline, but, well before, 1 year earlier, Chris, my comrade said seriously. If it happens right before the parade, the cruisers simply won't be allowed to participate. Shit. Exactly. So, during this year, you need to get rid of either the captain or the first officer. It'll be much easier if you choose the latter. The question is how I do it. The question is how to give you full, undetectable access to the ship's main computer. As far as I know, any unauthorized intrusion into the fleet's systems will be immediately localized and blocked, and the author will be hanged by their delicate organs within 5 minutes. Correct, Novak sighed. That's why my code integrates into the control system through official fleet updates. But it's simple, Chris. He looked at me with tired, sunken eyes. I'm a genius. I worked on it for a whole year. I stayed silent. Novak really had done something incredible. I had to get the raw code of the control programs, update specs, find a loophole for accessing the formed updates. Simply put, I didn't have to hack. I really don't understand how I haven't been caught yet. Maybe because I'm the best. Or maybe they're just waiting to see who comes through the other side of the thread. A chill ran down my spine. A disgusting possibility. All right, enough gloom, he smiled. In 2 updates, my block will be fully integrated into the control system, and after that, it will be almost impossible to remove. In short, all your actions will be encrypted as self-diagnostics. Open a door, the computer ran diagnostics. Erase incriminating records. The computer checked cameras and rewrote data. If used constantly, the scheme won't last long. They'll reverse engineer the code and find out. But occasional use won't raise suspicion, and that's what we need. More or less clear. And what about access? Simple. You log in at any terminal, call the command line, and enter a sequence of digits. Then invisibility mode activates, and a graphical interface appears. I didn't skimp on that. And then I don't know. You figure out some malfunction that leads to the result you want. Or rather, come up with the diagnostics. And I tried. Ever since the agreed sum of 1,150 credits landed in my account, I locked myself in my cabin whenever I had free time, entered those sacred digits, and studied the ship's internals. The program was amazing. I could do almost anything, even disable the cruiser indefinitely by causing minor problems in one reactor. But I couldn't cause a malfunction that would kill just one specific person I needed. Novak, please understand, I can't come up with a way. I know the deadlines are pressing. Try to think of something yourself. I will, he muttered ominously. And I roughly know what. For now, stop messing with the program. I'll tweak it. Well, tell me. I demanded. Novak hesitated, but finally answered with a question. Do you know the most common cause of death in space? Accident from depressurization. Exactly. That's the idea. He refused to explain further. A couple of hours after that conversation, I was shopping with Adele, looking at different wedding rings and thinking about how badly my life had turned out. Chris, maybe we should just do it all before the parade, my beloved said slyly, cuddling close as she looked at another ring. No, darling, we decided, after the celebration. I replied firmly, stroking her hair and thinking about how Novak planned to eliminate my colleague. Life sucks, and Novak really was a genius. It became clear the day the hatch of one of the compartments on the cruiser's docking deck opened accidentally, instantly ejecting 50 technicians, for stormtroopers, 2 transport ships, and the first officer, who happened to be there. Inspecting at the wrong time, the transports returned safely. None of the people survived. The investigation lasted a week. Experts finally uncovered the truth. A command to increase the lighting brightness was sent to the compartment, but a faulty microchip distorted the value and sent it to controllers that regulated explosive clamps. The controllers increased the voltage, the clamps fired, and cold space entered the compartment. Worst of all, the microchip failed during the cruiser's routine diagnostics. It passed the check and immediately died. A fatal chain of accidents. Well, Chris, the captain said sadly, you're now the first officer on the ship. God knows you deserve it, but how I wish you got this post differently. I remained silent, sympathizing with the veteran. My God, dear, you could have been in his place. I could have lost you forever, Adele said 3 weeks later with fear in her eyes. At moments like this, I think, maybe screw this service? Maybe it's time to come down from the heavens and live quietly by the sea like your friends. I was silent, stroking her back. I couldn't be in his place. My love, I couldn't. The first stage is complete, Novak said 4 hours later. The hardest part is left, but not the most difficult. You need to create a situation where you're on the bridge and can activate the shield. I looked at the specs. It's nothing complicated, just press a button. This thing will spread downwards in a cone shape, so no aiming needed. Listen, Novak, what exactly is this thing? He thought for a moment. Simply put, the shield is a cloud of antimatter molecules isolated from normal space. Isolated? How's that? Novak shrugged helplessly. I don't know, friend. If I did, I'd have left for the Federation, bought an island on the best planet, and spent the rest of my life shamelessly bathing in luxury. Got it. The only thing I know is that the isolation is unstable. That's why you can see the shield. The molecules simply lose protection and annihilate upon meeting our reality. Have you read anything about ringing in the ears? I suddenly asked, curiosity hitting me. There was some study once, but it was useless practically, and the project was shut down. The gist is that about 15 to 20% of people hear the ringing. And that's not caused by the shield itself, but some sort of acceleration thing. He saw I was a little lost and waved his hands for emphasis. It's sort of like a gravity well where a projectile is sent. First comes the gravity, then the projectile. And here it's a similar principle. First, the space is somehow set up, and only then the cloak flies out. All right, let's say I got it. So what about the plan? There are several components, Novak said, growing serious. You have to be on the bridge during the parade. That part we've got covered. You'll need to neutralize everyone who's there with you. I'm sure you haven't lost your touch and can handle it. Just a reminder, during the parade, all fixed weapons on the cruiser will be locked, and the crew won't be allowed to carry personal weapons, not even the captain. Also, there will be between 2 and 4 security officers on the bridge. I grimaced. That part of the plan didn't sit well with me. Then there are 2 more things. You'll need access to all the ship's systems, including the cloak. And you must block access to the bridge for any outsiders. The only part that worries me is the security officers. You're right, everything else is fairly easy to solve, Novak agreed. Let's brainstorm options. I returned home in a foul mood. The plan we came up with didn't hold up to any scrutiny. On top of that, I found out Adele was urgently called to the ship and left, leaving only a note with a few words. I kicked the wall angrily and went back to the club, where for the first time since my landing days, I got utterly drunk, and with the finest brandy, no less. The club staff showed refined tact. No questions, no girl sent my way, just letting the gentleman drink himself under the table, then sending him home in a branded taxi. Probably that's why the place is well regarded. Surprisingly, I woke up without a hangover and barely any dry mouth. Must have been the quality of the alcohol that on the bedside table, there was a tray with an elegant bottle of some drink and a small booklet that explained this potion would relieve all symptoms of a wild night and get me ready to see the emperor at a moment's notice. The drink tasted quite unpleasantly sweet and salty, but indeed worked wonders. I immediately felt refreshed and full of energy. Although, where to apply this energy, I didn't know. I didn't feel like going back to the club, no business on the horizon, and Adele had flown off into space. In the end, I idly spent the whole day lying on the bed, watching some comedies online, then gave up and left the planet early, heading back to the cruiser. And so we embarked on a 6-month flight. It was our turn to patrol some sector of space. Nobody really cared about our system, but rules are rules that I was gradually settling into the role of the captain's first officer and gaining valuable experience. Sometimes I even taught a few tricks to the kid who took my old post, the second officer. In my free time, I worked on restoring my body's skills, which had gotten lazy from lack of regular training. I practiced weapon katas and simply trained. Then I fell into a heavy, dreamless sleep. "Chris, you've been looking pretty wiped lately," the captain said kindly when the cruiser turned around and set course back. "We'll probably hold the parade, then I'll send you on a proper leave for a couple of months. Especially since I heard you and a certain lovely lady are planning to get married. What can you say to a jovial old man winking at you?" "Thanks, Captain. I guess I really can't avoid the wedding this time." "You're a lucky guy, Chris." If only I'd met someone like your girl back in my day." The captain sighed, gazing at the ceiling. "When you get married, I'll arrange her transfer to our ship. No sense letting spouses fly God knows how far apart." Then he left smiling, leaving me on duty. Honestly, if you think about it, in 10 years I'd definitely be captain of this cruiser. With my beloved wife on board, interesting contacts in the Empire. Ah, dreams. As we approached the capital planet, letters began to arrive. The first was from Prostak. "Hey buddy, just found out your tub will be part of the parade formation. Congrats, that's awesome. Hank, the kids, and I decided we couldn't miss this celebration. We'll be watching you from the best seats." Turns out the Emperor reserved a special privileged sector for participants of that mess. So keep an eye out for us too. Hank and the gang send their regards. Something inside me snapped. Prostak, Hank, the guys I started service with, the ones who'd covered my back more than once. Not to mention their families. That evening, I didn't train, just lay on my back staring at the ceiling. A nasty gray fog swirled in my head and invisible little bells tinkled lazily. 2 days later, another message came. I barely believed my eyes when Sergeant Riley appeared on the screen. The girl looked duller than before, having lost her former spark and cheerfulness, though she was still beautiful. With a pounding heart, I started the recording. "Good day, Commander. Sorry for not replying to your letters. I think it was better that way for everyone. I recently returned to my home system, couldn't stand it, and looked you up. I thought it would be rude not to congratulate you. You're doing great. I'm glad you're taking part in the parade. Nobody will let me have a good seat, but I hope to see your ship anyway. Farewell, Commander. You guys planned this, didn't you?" I said hopelessly, staring at the display. The next letter was from Adele. "Hi, darling. Bad news. They won't let me go to the parade. Our old ship won't be participating, of course, but I have to cover something on the far side of the planet. To me, it's idiotic, but Command knows best, as usual. I'll have a couple of days on the planet before the parade. I hope you'll manage to get away too. Kisses." I burst into hysterical laughter. Probably, at that moment, our whole plan was under the greatest threat. If someone had just passed by the cabin and heard that hysteria, I'm sure I'd have been sent to medbay and quietly transferred off the ship. Bad news. Bad news. The laughter ended in a coughing fit, and I collapsed to the floor, exhausted. Bad news. A week later, we reached the orbit of Corona 1. The cruiser docked at the orbital base, rushing through a pre-parade inspection. Heavy weapons were programmatically locked, light weapons were removed and taken deep into the base. Control system updates were downloaded. The crew repeatedly rehearsed the parade protocol under the watchful eye of 4 security officers. The parade was set to happen exactly in 2 weeks. A week later, a miracle happened. The main crew got a full day off. The whole flight to the surface, I was on pins and needles. Adele was waiting for me somewhere out there. And Novak, damn him. While still on the ship, I sent him a message asking about the deals, whether there was a chance to move some money to properly celebrate the long-awaited reunion with my fiancée. In other words, I'd be arriving on the surface soon and heading straight to the club. When I landed, I got his reply. Novak was already waiting for me. Ignoring the money, I pulled out a silver rectangle and called the club's flyer right there on the landing pad. The card replied that I should stay put. A sleek black car landed beside me within 3 minutes, releasing its ramp right under my feet. "Good afternoon, Mr. Alt," the pilot greeted me. "Please state your destination." "Good afternoon. To the Corona, please." The pilot nodded, and within seconds we were airborne. Another 10 minutes of fast flight, and we were on the club's roof. "Have a good day, Mr. Alt," the pilot said, waving goodbye as the car rose away. The door of a small annex opened, and another administrator came out. "Mr. Alt, the elevators are at your service." After going down, I quickly found Novak in our favorite spot. He inspected my parade uniform, snorted, but didn't criticize. "So, what do I need to know?" "From a software perspective, everything's set. Everything downloaded and will work exactly as planned. So you've got all the cards in your hands." But I took a precaution. "How?" It occurred to me that all fleet cruisers have long had my module in their control programs. There will be exactly 25 cruisers in the parade. And exactly 5 minutes after your program starts, the 25 cruisers flying over the planet's surface will simultaneously begin diagnostics and restart their gravity engines. "You're going to wreck a third of the fleet," I said slowly, realizing the scale of what was about to happen. "Yeah, friend. I'll make a nice contribution to our cause." Novak squinted like a well-fed cat. "Our whole operation exists only thanks to you." I waved my hand. "At best, I could crash the ship into the palace. Now the main thing is that your information bombs work. They'll work, my friend, they'll work. And we will fulfill our duty to them," he said, pointing a finger toward the sky. I glanced at my watch. "It's time for me to go. Is there anything else I should know?" "Carl asked me to send his regards." Novak remembered. "He said he'll be watching the capital from afar, with a glass of wine and a trusty pistol at his side. And he'll be drinking to you. If there's a chance, pass on my regards to him too." "That's it, friend. I'm off. It's been an honor to be part of our team. It's a shame not everyone made it this far. Farewell." "Farewell," Novak said solemnly as he shook my outstretched hand. Ahead of me was a whole day with Adele. Probably never before in my life had I tried so hard to have fun as I did today. And never had I been so utterly unsuccessful at it. We rode children's rides and petted tame squirrels. Ate ice cream in the park and some fancy dishes at a restaurant on the square. We took a club flyer ride over the city and then walked home, breathing in the scent of blooming flowers on the trees. Adele was happy. I was floundering in a sea of despair, trying not to think about the future. By the end of the evening, exhausted, we fell asleep like the dead. At dawn, an unrelenting alarm woke me. It was time to return to the cruiser. After getting ready, I spent a few minutes looking at the sleeping girl. "I love you," I whispered, kissing her temple, hidden beneath tangled hair. "I love you too," Adele mumbled sleepily, turning over. "Come back soon." I left. Ahead of me lay the morning chill, a flight to the spaceport on the club flyer, and a swift rush into orbit. The rest of the time before the parade was all training and memorizing regulations. A simple enough task, yet 6 days passed in the blink of an eye. Finally, the security officers took pity and left us alone. Only one night remained before the parade. People walked the ship excited and joyful, while my pale appearance was explained by exhaustion, earning sympathetic glances. "Simmons told me you'd be ready to work day and night if needed, and I didn't believe him." The captain smiled slyly. "I'll send you on leave the day after the parade." You'll finally get some rest. I merely gave a weak smile and nodded in response. Morning found me examining a healing bottle from the club's arsenal. Just what I needed to cheer up. The taste was even worse than last time. But what could I do? The bridge buzzed with cheerful excitement. Even the security officers smiled, listening to jokes, though their eyes kept watchful. The captain produced 2 bottles of my favorite brandy from somewhere and began personally filling glasses. Gentlemen, no drinking yet. We wait until we're over the square, he declared. We responded with an approving murmur, and here it was, entering the atmosphere. We descended into it about 100 kilometers from the capital and maneuvered with all engines to take our place in formation. Now we could relax. The autopilot program would guide us along the designated route. The minutes of tense waiting dragged on. We're moving, one of the navigators whispered loudly. Indeed, the entire fleet, led by a gigantic battleship, perhaps the first in history to come so close to the surface, simultaneously started moving. We're going strong. Someone displayed a live feed from local TV, and we got to admire ourselves from the outside. Truly a magnificent sight. Slowing down. The same navigator commented that I glanced at my watch. 3 minutes left. Only 3 minutes. The fleet, slowing to a crawl, reached the capital's suburbs. 20 seconds. My communicator beeped with a message. I glanced at it. Darling, I managed to get off. Watching the parade, what a wonderful sight. Kisses. 10 seconds. I stood frozen, feeling hair stir on my head and a trickle of cold sweat running down my spine. 5 seconds. Acting like a robot, I took the glass of brandy and stepped toward the captain and the security officer standing beside him. Captain, I raised my glass. We're over the capital. Time to take a sip, or we'll miss the most important moment. The security officer, slightly tense, relaxed, and the captain chuckled heartily. You're right, Chris. Let's. Behind them, a massive tactical display suddenly sparked, flared, and shattered into glass shards as it received a massive electrical overload. The captain froze. The security officer turned instantly to what was happening and brought his pistol holster right under my hand that I wasn't imagining things. I did exactly what Jared once did before my eyes. We had learned from the same teachers. Thoughts shut down, leaving only cold reflexes that my right hand smoothly drew the pistol from the holster. One practiced move to disengage the safety and turn the muzzle toward the former owner. I wondered if it had been as easy for Jared to shot. My left hand dropped the glass of expensive brandy and grabbed the collapsing opponent's neck, keeping him from falling and dragging the safety-tethered pistol with him. The captain still stared at the burning display. Shots fired, shot after shot. 2 security officers fell like skittles knocked down. The third, blessed either with devilish intuition or divine reflexes, managed to fall sideways and dodge his own bullet. But there was open floor and no cover. Shots fired again. The nimble man froze. Chris, what? I didn't listen to the captain, his words cut off by a shot. My mind was still empty, just bare calculation. Officers looked at me with wide, surprised eyes. A shot. The chief navigator, hit in the head, slumped back in his chair, arms hanging and tongue out. A shot. The second navigator, who was heading for the door, collapsed onto the floor. Horror replaced surprise in the remaining eyes. Adjutants, navigators, radio operators, compartment coordinators. There were enough bullets for all. 2 cartridges left, as the counter in my head coldly noted. The fever of battle slowly ebbed. For a moment, I stood staring straight ahead. The targets were eliminated, the line crossed. There was no turning back, and there never would be. It took me about 10 seconds to comprehend this that I shook my head and released the pistol. The weapon softly fell onto its owner's body lying at my feet. I approached the captain's control panel and poked it with a finger. Full access activated. Could it really have worked? Bring Module X 52-16 to combat readiness. Command executed. Deployment time, 20 seconds. That fast. I glanced around. and my gaze suddenly caught the communicator lying where I had been sitting. Damn, Adele, I started toward it and stopped. Module X 52-16 is now combat ready. Above the captain's panel, a projection of the surface beneath the cruiser appeared. The entire capital and the vast area around it were shaded. In red, goddamn it. I looked again at the communicator, then at the map. Then I slumped heavily into the old man's chair and grabbed the nearby bottle of Earth Pearl. I twirled it in my hands, took a sip, and tasted nothing. Before my eyes was Adele's smiling face. Behind her, one by one, absurd figures appeared and reappeared, wandering the streets of a dark, snow-covered city. My eyes welled up with uninvited tears, and I got angry. Damn it. Why me? I shouted, slamming the bottle on the control panel. Brandy splattered across my chest. Command invalid. Please repeat. The emotionless computer voice responded. The calm of the electronic mind slightly cooled my own. I looked at the image. Again, the projection shifted slightly, but the entire capital remained deep inside the red circle. Above the map, the current time digits were running. I habitually did the math. Almost 3 minutes had passed since the display exploded. If I trusted Novak, I had only 2 minutes left before the computer would start diagnostics, and the Empire would crash down as a huge scrap heap. It took nearly a minute for the fiery curtain to deploy. That meant I had 1 minute to make a decision. And only I was responsible for what would happen below. Or what wouldn't happen. I shook my head and leaned on the bottle clenched in my hand. Adele, Riley, Hank, Prostak. Familiar faces of people who had become dear to me kept spinning painfully in my mind that I squeezed my eyes shut with all my might, and that helped a little. As if in a waking dream. A quiet, solemn, painfully familiar silver melody began to sound. Other, half-forgotten images slowly started to appear before my eyes. The curator, Dr. Zoll, Bobby, Jarrett, the faded faces of my parents, and those same faceless figures wading knee-deep in the snow. The sergeant, goodbye, private. Study like hell, and someday raise a glass for me. His voice echoed in my ears as if in real life. That I glanced at the bottle in my hand and gave a crooked smile. To your health, Sergeant. Epilogue. Adele, listening intently to the Emperor's solemn speech, suddenly froze, straining to hear something. Then she nudged her friend standing nearby, someone who, like her, had just been granted leave from the ship. Do you hear that? Like tiny little bells ringing.